गलद्दानगण्डं मिलद्भृङ्गखण्डं चलच्चारुशुण्डं जगत्राणशौण्डं लसद्दन्तकाण्डं विपद्भङ्गचण्डं शिवप्रेमपिण्डं भजे वक्रतुण्डम्। अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुर्व्याप्य सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां सदा मे समत्वं न मुक्तिर्न बन्धः चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। आपदामपहर्तारं दातारं सर्वसम्पदां लोकाभिरामं श्रीरामं भूयो भूयो नमाम्यहम्। प्रभु श्री रामचंद्र भगवान की जय, श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय, जय जय रघुवीर समर्थ। I bow at the lotus feet of Prabhu Shri Ramachandra, Bhagavan Shri Gopal Krishna, Bhagavan Shri Mahadev, and all the deities present here. I also bow at the lotus feet of my Sadguru, Dr. Shri Krishna Dattatreya Deshmukh, who we fondly call as Dr. Kaka. Also bow at the feet of Parampujya Mandate Gandhe. And finally, I bow at the divinity within all of you. Today's topic is God, why, what, and how. The very title is very interesting, of course. Maybe a bit provocative, if you will. And it is by design. Why? Because the moment you say there is a discourse, 80% of the people decide, oh, it is not for me, I don't want to attend. That to a spiritual discourse in a temple, and if you give some other title, marketing gimmicks, right? Keeping jokes aside, it's a very interesting, thought-provoking topic for sure. Why? Because the moment you say God, everybody has certain ideas in their mind. I mean, it is not something that nobody knows anything about it. Right? Everybody knows something about it. But question is, does everybody knows everything about it? Is the question. And before I begin my talk, my discourse, I would like to give the disclaimer. I am trained in this new world, so getting used to the language of copyright, patents, disclaimers. What is the disclaimer? The disclaimer is whatever I am going to say today is going to be within the confines, the boundaries of Upanishad. So if anybody, I just want to clarify that first, get the big boulders out of our way. If anybody is in a mindset here that, oh, I'm going to hear something that will either prove or disapprove God, that's not the topic of discussion. Disclaimer is, you must be a believer in Vedas, Upanishads. And there is a reason why I'm saying this. I'm putting it jokingly as a disclaimer, but the reason is God, which I will stop using the word because it was just for the title's sake. There are different words. Parabrahma, Paramatma. Brahman is a word. I see some Westerners in the audience, they identify with that word. So I will probably use Brahman. Let's settle with that first of all. That there itself the subject begins because there are so many names. You talk to this person, he will call by some name, the same entity. He will say some other name, she will say some other name, it's okay. Doesn't matter, I will settle with Brahman for now. So God or Brahman, as I said, is not, or that concept for that matter, is not a product of a human mind. In other words, it is beyond human comprehension. Because when you say comprehension, we are essentially talking about the intellect. We are essentially talking about human mind, etc. So, Brahman is not a product of human mind. Which basically means we have to take a refuge in somebody or someone or a text which is called as scriptures, which is not a product of human mind. And that is called Vedas. And for those who are too new to all these things, may not know about it, the last part of the Vedas is called Vedanta. Anta means the end. The chapter at the end of Vedas is called Vedanta. That is also called Upanishad. It is also called Vedanta from other perspective because Vedas, it's very vast in nature, but the final conclusion of Vedas is documented in the last section. That is called Upanishads. Point I am trying to make, this is the oldest scripture in the world. Though it was delivered through a human, though human mind was used as an instrument to document it, to offer it to the rest of the world, but what they documented, who are called Rishis, is not again the product of human mind. They just happen to document it. They are called drashtas, they are not kartas of it. They are not the doers of it. So, my point, we are here to talk about Brahman. A concept for now, let's call it a concept, which is beyond human intellect, which is beyond human mind, which is beyond everything we can imagine, we can think. Because no matter who you are, right from the most illiterate person to maybe the Einsteins of the world, their experiences or their discoveries and their inventions and their greatness is still confined by what is called as human brain. Yes, maybe most evolved one, that's why we call him Einstein probably. But still it is confined by human brain. None of us can cross those boundaries of human brain. That is the interface given to us and that's why we perceive the world through that interface in a very same manner. If I say this cloth is red in color, I'm sure nobody will object to it. Because somebody said, this, whatever we see, let's call it red. Everybody agreed on that, because everybody sees it as a red. Why? Well, I don't want to change the topic, but now that I reference to this, today modern neuroscience explains us there is nothing called as red in the world anyway. It is the light falling on it, reflecting, hitting my retina. Impulse is going back to my brain, being interpreted in a certain way, and because all of us, meaning the brain of all of us, process that information in a certain way, all of us experience it in a certain way, and we say, okay, red, we have no problem. Everybody agrees. And this can easily be proven because there are people who are colorblind. So for them, they see the world differently. I have a dog at my home. What I cannot hear, my dog can hear. My point is, I cannot call my perception a reality. My dog has a different reality. That color blind person has a different reality. There are many, many birds probably who can see during the night. I cannot. Point. What I perceive and what I meaning all of us as human perceive cannot be defined as reality. We are bound by our experiences, we are bound by our senses, we are bound by our mind, ultimately we are bound by our intellect, even if you are Einstein. And the topic of today is beyond human mind, beyond human comprehension. So we have to take a refuge in the oldest scripture of the world called Vedas, Upanishads. Again, which is not a product of human mind, and we have to trust it wholeheartedly. That's called Sharanagati. That's called surrender. Yes. Ekam Sat Vipram Bahudha Vadanti. Absolutely. It is not a problem of modern world. This verse comes from Rigveda. Rigveda, we know, thousands of years old, I already said. It is the oldest scripture of the world. Even at that time, Rigveda is saying it is one universal truth, the supreme reality. But people talk about the same supreme reality in very different ways. So don't think that it is today's problem. That means it must have been a situation even thousands of years back that about the same reality, different people talk about differently. And it's okay, there should not be a problem about it. The differences come when we say God, right? I said everybody has their own ideas. The differences come from how we perceive that supreme reality. The difference also comes from how do I find my relationship with that supreme reality called Brahman. How do I define that relationship? For some people, for example, God is impersonal. For some people, God is very personal. All these views are fine because as far as they are referring to the same reality, you are headed in the right direction. It's just that your paths are different. But the moment I say, no, my way is highway. You know that, my way, highway. I heard that, I learned that slang, if you will, from my kids who go to school. I didn't know that. My way is highway. Basically means how I perceive God or Brahman. That is the only way. You are wrong. My relationship with God is either personal or impersonal. And if my relationship is impersonal and he says, no, I have a personal relationship with the one, the deity here, that is my God, then I say, you are wrong, and he says, I am wrong. And then the fight ensues. People are getting killed in the name of religion. Why? Because they insist how I perceive God, how I build a relationship with God is the only way, and is not only the only way, it is the most superior way in the world. That's the problem. Another thing which I always like, no matter whether those people who know me here well, no matter what the topic I'm talking about, I always like to first address the why. In fact, that might be, that rather should be a question in your mind also. Why should we hear? Why should I listen to him? What is, I will use today's language, what is in it for me? Nowadays we are very selfish, right? We don't do anything if there's nothing in it for me. So let's first address that question. Why? And that's why the title we have given intentionally, God, why, what and how. And this is why I first put a disclaimer that whatever I'm going to say will be within the confines of Upanishads. Nothing of mine. So Upanishad describe the supreme reality, Brahman, as Anando Brahmeti Vejana. Anandat eva khalvimani bhutani jayante anandena jatani jivanti. Anando Brahmeti Vyajana. Vyajana basically means I realize, I experience what? Brahman is nothing but Ananda. Okay, another disclaimer. Feels like Mangeshdada is coming with disclaimer after disclaimer. So this is probably the only one, another second one, which is I refuse to translate some of the words in English. I probably will explain it, but I will continue using the word as is from Sanskrit, which is why I said this, because I just uttered one word called Ananda. And why do I refuse to translate? Because that concept doesn't exist. There is no right word for it. But I can give you the word that comes close to it, which is called as bliss. Bliss is a word a lot of people identify with. So when I say Ananda, please hear bliss. I'm not going to say bliss. I'll keep saying Ananda because, as I said, that word comes closest, but it still doesn't capture the essence. But you at least, those who don't understand the word Ananda, at least got an idea what I'm referring to. Absolute bliss. So Ananda. Ananda Brahmeti Vejana. Brahman is Ananda, is what I experienced. Ananda eva khalvimani bhutani jayante. This entire universe is born out of Ananda. Anandena jatani jivanti. The entire living and non-living things in this entire universe is in existence because of that Ananda. Of course, I am referring to Sat Chit Ananda Brahman. Why did I say this? Because I am answering the question why. Why should I listen to this spiritual discourse? Why should I even think about God? What do I miss or lose if I do not believe in God? What do I miss or lose if I do not try to realize God or Brahman? So that why is extremely important. Now, whatever we learn or whatever we know or whatever we think about God or Brahman or Parmeshwar or Paramatma or Ishwar, you can call it by many names, is conditioning of our mind, sort of. Because we learned about it, somebody told us about it, we believe in it, right? Conditioning of mind. But I just said Anando Brahmeti Vejana. So, to explain that concept a little bit further with an example, I would like to give you an example. Let's say, think about a small child. When I say small child, I'm talking about a baby, an infant actually, who is only 2 weeks old, who came to this world 2 weeks old, arrived in this world 2 weeks, before 2 weeks, 4 weeks, nothing about weeks, number of weeks. But I'm saying, such a young child or baby who is born, who obviously doesn't know anything about God, forget about God, that baby or child or that infant doesn't even understand what the father means, what the mother means, what the human means, what are the things around me. That baby, that small child doesn't know anything, correct? It's part of our experience. My Sadguru, Dr. Kaka, I already said, we fondly call him Dr. Kaka. He is medical doctor by profession. So he, as a doctor, he delivered thousands of babies in this world. Helped those mothers deliver thousands of babies. And he studied that a typical thing that happens when a human child is born, he or she, we'll call it a baby cries. Why I'm giving you an example of a baby? Because we are going back to as far as possible in the human life where the mind has not started being conditioned. You're getting my point, I hope, right? You're following me. Mind of that baby is not conditioned. It is as blank slate as it can be. So one thing baby knows very well. The baby doesn't know father, mother, anything it doesn't know. It doesn't even understand. It cannot comprehend the world around herself or himself. But one thing the baby does, baby cries. All of us do. Now, my Sadguru, as I said, medical doctor, he studied why does a baby cry? Because baby doesn't know anything. That baby is not able to comprehend anything. That child is so young. The mind is not developed, the intellect is not developed, ego is not developed. The whole concept of I is not developed there. But still, one thing baby knows, what? To cry. Nobody, we don't have to teach that child, you should cry now. So that I know you are hungry. Who taught that to the baby? Nobody. Right? So there are three reasons Dr. Kaka said that infant child cries. The very first reason is I already mentioned. When the baby feels hungry, it starts crying. It doesn't understand anything, by the way. What is mother, what is milk, nothing. It just knows. The beauty is, it doesn't even know that I am hungry. Think about it, it's a very profound topic, by the way. But baby cries. And we know as adults, as grown-ups, oh, baby must be hungry, that's why it is crying. Okay, where is mother, milk, whatever the food we give at that time. But the question I am posing here in front of all of you is, why does baby cry when it is hungry? So there is something within that even unconditioned mind which is telling that baby, cry so that you get food, so that you survive. Yes, we call it basic instincts of survival. Similarly, the baby cries if there is a darkness in the room, the baby is not able to perceive anything. Even if that child doesn't understand anything, it is still trying to perceive through their eyes. You can see the baby eyes are doing this. It probably can't even see the things at distance. Probably it can only see up to certain feet. But whatever that limited capability the baby has at that young age, it is still trying to perceive something through five senses. And when there is a blockage to that perception because of the darkness, because of whatever reason, baby starts crying. This is another basic instinct that. So we are basically talking about three fundamental instincts, correct? The instinct of survival, the instinct of knowledge, instinct of happiness. And one more time I would like to repeat, I am talking about a small child, an unconditioned mind. Now the next logical question becomes, and here is the beauty, by the way, no matter who that baby is, born in India, born in America, born in Africa, probably born in International Space Station on Mars, which is going to be a reality in future, doesn't matter whether it is a white or black or brown, the so-called all the differences we go by. No, nothing matters. Isn't it fascinating thing? We are full of so many differences, but that any baby you see, they behave in the very same way because instincts are the same. Now, the next logical question, this instinct of survival and knowledge and happiness, which is called as asti, bhati, priya. In Sanskrit, the words for it is asti, bhati. Asti meaning I must survive, I must be there, I must exist. Bhati, I must know. Priya, happiness. Now these are the instincts, and because these are the instincts, there must be a source of the instinct. Where does these instincts come from? Well, welcome to Upanishad. Because that source is beyond human intellect. That source is beyond human mind. Now we have to take surrender and refuge in Upanishads, which explains that yes, you are right, there is asti bhati priya, but what you don't understand is the source of that instinct. And that source is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Asti comes from Sat, bhati comes from Chit, and happiness comes from, or priyatva comes from Ananda. I hope now you understood. I took a longer detour to explain Anando Brahmeti Vyajanat. So, in other words, I am answering the question, why do I need to know about God or Brahman? Why do I need to realize God or experience God or Brahman? Is because it is the source of these three basic instincts. The problem is, all of us or all the people, everybody is, if I may use the word, wasting their life following the instincts but forgetting about the source. And if we can go back to the source somehow, we'll talk about it, that is the how part of it. If we can go back to the source, if I can get access to the source, and getting access basically means experiencing that it is me. There's a very good verse, Aham asmi sada bhami kadachin nahama priya. Brahmaivata siddham satchidananda lakshana. What is it saying? That aham asmi, I exist. If anybody has any doubt, please raise your hand. That I doubt whether I exist. I exist, of course. Aham asmi sada bhami. Not only I exist, I know I exist. I think Einstein once said, if I'm not wrong, he said, or some of the great scientists of modern days, he said that obviously world is very complex, it is strange, it is beautiful, etc. But that's not the point. The point is, we experience the world is more interesting. So, aham asmi sada bhami. I exist, but I say I exist because I experience I exist. I know I exist. So, aham asmi sada bhami. And kadachin nahama priya basically means I always love myself. Look at how profound this thought is and how beautiful this thought is. I don't know how many people are here, but whatever, 40, 50 people, but 8 billion people on the planet. Forget about humans, I am also talking about non-humans. Every single living organism, including probably that single cell amoeba, to the dog, the cat, lion, cow, any animal, of course human, one thing is common. Going back to the same point again, everybody loves themselves. Yes, even the person who is committing suicide also loves himself or herself. In fact, they are committing suicide because there is something is coming in way of their happiness, and they think that if I just get rid of this body, everything will be alright. Believe it or not, the person who is committing suicide also loves. He's committing suicide because of the love for himself or herself. My point is, There is not a single exception. And why everybody loves themselves? It is our nature. And by the way, that is God. So, again, why should I know about God? Because once I know Brahman, I sometimes keep using the word God, still I go back because of the title, but I'm talking about Brahman. Once I know the supreme reality, once I know Brahman, and when I hear the word know basically means experience. And here again the word experience means becoming one with it. The union, yuja, yoga. That is what yoga is referred as in Bhagavad Gita. Becoming one with it, because that is my very nature. My problem is I have forgotten about it. That is called as a jnana, a jnana. So it is in very much of my personal interest that I must learn methods or different ways of realizing Brahman, my own very nature. That brings us to the next time check. That brings us to the next question of, I probably understood why. And that's why Upanishad also declares that Yada charma vadakasham veshtaishanti manavaha tada devam vidnyaya dukkhasyanto bhavishya. Shatashvatar Upanishad declares. What does it say? Yada charma vadakasham veshtaishanti manavaha. Sanskrit, of course, difficult to understand. I will obviously translate for you. They are interestingly putting the same point. This verse is talking about that if you can cover the entire space with your human skin, basically they are trying to say, as this is impossible to do, similarly, without realizing that I am Brahman, I am one with it, there is no chance in this world that you can end all the sufferings and sorrows of the world. That is what this verse is talking about. Devam abhinyaya. If you don't realize what is God, what is Brahman, there is no chance, and that is the problem with me. Whatever my age is today, 40 or 50 years, I started with 40 looking at audience, but there are a few people, obviously, young people too. No matter what my age is, my problem is, or everybody's problem statement, if I may say, and I'm sure nobody will object to it, I want to be happy. And not only that, there is the other side of it, I don't want to be unhappy. Correct? But whatever my life I have lived so far is telling me every single day that no, I haven't experienced pure happiness. And when I say pure, without unhappiness. It always comes bundled with unhappiness. There are sorrows. There are always happiness with sorrow. I don't get happiness the way I want. I don't get the happiness when I want it. I don't get the happiness to the degree I want it. My experience is telling me every day, and I still keep doing the same thing. I still keep following the same old methods. And Upanishad is declaring here, forget about it. Forget about it. It will never ever happen. Dukkhasyanto bhavishyati. It cannot happen. Devam abhinyaya. If you do not understand, if you do not realize, if you do not experience what Brahman is, that very your nature, the sorrow in human life or anybody's life will never ever go away. I am again answering the question, why God? Why Brahman? Now quickly, moving on in the interest of time, you at least understood a little bit of why. Now let's talk about what. Obviously, I touch a lot upon what the nature of the God is. But still, how does it manifest? I was giving an example of a young child, baby, infant. Now let's talk about us, grown-ups, adults. What is my relationship with God? We think that when I come to the temple, I do the namaskaram, God is there. And I will come to that. Because the question becomes, is this not God then? Yes, it is. Who said it is not God? Otherwise, why would I go to the temple? But is this only God? No, then you are wrong. That is what we are talking about. So what is my relationship with God? Guess what? Every second of my life, I am constantly associated. Why? Because that is very much my own nature. न तत्र सूर्यो भाति न तत्र न चंद्र तारका नेमा विद्युतो भान्ति कुतोयम अग्नि तम एव भान्तम अनुभाति सर्वम तस्य भाषा सर्वम एवं विभाति. Upanishad. Again, I told you, we have to take, finally we have to take a refuge there. It is defining God or Brahman for you. And once you understand this, we realize, oh my God, I think, so far I was thinking, when I go to the temple, there is God. When I go to my puja ghar or devghar in my house, there is a God. I see certain symbols and then it reminds me of God. No. Every living moment of my life, I am in constant touch with God, but I don't realize it. Here this verse is declaring, for example, by the way, God or Brahman is called as Deva in Sanskrit and also my mother tongue Marathi, Deva. Dyotana iti Deva is the Vyutpatti, the definition of Dyotana. There is a Sanskrit dhatu, the etymology of that word is tutor or diva. There are two kinds of Sanskrit roots of that word. And I will give a very simple definition. If you want to walk away with something simple that you can remember easily, I'll give that definition which my Sadguru has given. It's the same thing, but he put it very succinctly and very simply. He says, and again I will have to go back to the Sanskrit word Diva or Deva. Diva is the dhatu, Sanskrit dhatu, the root of that word, and from that two words are coined. One is called Diva, another is called Deva. We understand the word Diva. Diva is the light, the physical light, either sun or moon or this electric light. But in that light, I can see. Follow me, stay with me, it's a bit subtle. This physical light helps me to see, of course. But the other word which is formed out of the same root called Dev is something which I comprehend or I conceive or I perceive. There are two things that are happening at the same time. Right now you are listening to me, right? But you are also understanding what I am saying. This understanding, this consciousness, which lacks from artificial intelligence, by the way. I come from that field, so AI, right? ChatGPT. I mean, some people have gone to the extent, oh, this is God. Well, I'm sorry, no. Because ChatGPT knowledge is confined by what is available on the internet and the public domain. So there is a limitation to its knowledge, and here knowledge basically means information. But there is no consciousness. My point was, there is no consciousness. But all of us, we have consciousness. We perceive things, whether right or wrong, but we do perceive. That is what this verse is talking about. That is what the word Deva, I am trying to explain to you, that Diva, we see in that physical light called Diva, but whatever we see, we conceive, we perceive, that very act of perception, consciousness, is called God, it's called Brahman. It is because of that I am able to perceive. It is because of that I am able to perceive. That is God. So now you tell me, every living moment of our life, are we not perceiving anything? Think about it. The first moment we get up in the morning, to the last moment we go back to sleep, what are we doing? I am asking you a question to think on your feet. Whether you are doing it intentionally or you are doing it unintentionally. Every waking moment, we are perceiving something or the other, either through my eyes, through my ear, through touch, through smell, five senses. Constantly perceiving the world. And that very perception is possible because that consciousness or perception, perceiving, knowing, experiencing, there are different words for it, is becoming possible because there is that pure consciousness in my heart, which is called again Chit. And that is Chit, that is Sat, that is Ananda. So we talked about the two aspects of the same thing. First we talked about Ananda Brahmeti Vejana. That's where I started. Now we are talking about knowledge which all of us are fascinated by. But the problem is, I get so carried away with the subject of the knowledge which exists in the world that I forget about the pure consciousness which is making knowing that subject possible. Because Brahman is neither objective or nor subjective knowledge by nature. That is the what part of a God. Again, interest of time, I would like to move on to the third and the last aspect or dimension of today's topic is how. And then I will stop, and if you have some time permitting, we can take some questions as well. So we talked about why, we talked about what. It's a very vast topic, no doubt about it. I myself know I have not touched upon all the aspects and the dimensions, but we always have obviously limit of time. So let's talk about a little bit of how. Again, it's that itself also very elaborative topic, but I will briefly touch upon two sides of it, two aspects, so to say. One is how the concept of God was developed over periods of over thousands of years, and then how to realize it. That's a real how, right? Because you will say, you just said in the beginning that this very concept is beyond human comprehension, and now you are talking about how the concept of God is developed over thousands of years? Contradiction, right? I know what I'm talking about. I haven't forgotten what I have said. Now I'm talking about personal God. The concept of a personal God. Now we come back to the idols in the temple. So let's go back thousands of years in human history, quickly, mentally, conceptually, and think about Homo sapiens living in caves, worrying about when the next food will come. Those were the days, right? And humans started hunting. They started feeding themselves. Thousands of years passed by, and humans learned how to do farming. Okay, so situation is now better. At least the food is guaranteed. When the food was only dependent on animals, food was not guaranteed. With farming, there was certain guarantee at least, if not 100%. Point I'm trying to make, when all these basic necessities of humans were satisfied, there were some brilliant minds around those times who started thinking beyond. Because every day there used to be a night, darkness used to fall upon. By the way, because of the word darkness, I just recollected one thing. Pardon me for digressing from the topic I'm just talking about, but it's important to complete my earlier thought. I was talking about perception, experience, right? That absolute knowledge, what is called as absolute bliss, like that absolute knowledge. And I was also explaining you the difference between the physical light and the light within us, because that's what the words mean. Tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati, meaning one that illumines everything. So the point because I have digressed a little bit, why? Because of the word darkness. When the sun rises in the morning, the darkness goes away. That basically means sunlight cannot illumine darkness. Think about it. But do you experience darkness? Yes, I do. How do you experience darkness? Is there a light? Does it make sense? Hey, I brought some light because you wanted to see the darkness, right? How does that sound? But we experience darkness. So that experience, the knowledge of darkness, is because that something is self-illuminating called Brahman in my heart. Come back to the topic. Because of the word darkness, I got digress a little bit, but it was a very important point. Coming back. So, basic necessity satisfied. There were some great minds at that time. When darkness used to fall upon, they used to see up the sky, they see a lot of stars, moon, sun rising. So they started thinking, what is this all about? What is this all about? I should know the nature of all these things. What does it mean? Why does star blinks but other they didn't know obviously at that time this is a star and that is a planet, but some things do not blink. I need to know the reality. There were some great minds around those times. They started thinking about it. But quickly speaking, and in the interest of time, they very soon got divided into two groups. The first group of those great minds or brilliant minds said, okay, I am going to dissect everything, whatever I see. I am going to analyze everything I see. I am going to document everything I see. I want to learn. I want to know the true nature of whatever is around, water, air, fire, sun, moon, everything I experience, I want to know the true nature. But then they soon realize that what I see with naked eyes is not sufficient, so they developed an instrument called telescope. Then they realize what I see with the naked eyes here is also not sufficient. There is a subtler nature to this gross thing, so they developed a microscope. Things like that. That set of great minds, brilliant minds are called today's scientists. I'm only talking about scientists who are dealing with the fundamental science, not the applied science. That's when the problem begins, by the way. Because fundamental scientists are, even today, they are true to their knowledge as well as the limitation of their knowledge. They do agree with the limitation. They say, this is how much we know so far. They never claim we have figured out everything. Anyway, that is not a topic. But then the second set of people said, they went even deeper in the contemplation of solving this problem. They said, wait a second, we see all these things, there is a day and night happening. At that time, obviously they used to think that the sun revolves around the earth, right? There is a moon. Slowly they realize sun doesn't revolve, sun is stationary, the earth revolves around it, etc., etc. No matter what, no matter how you expand the horizons of your knowledge, they realize one thing, that we as humans are not capable of producing even a speck of a dust simply by thinking about it or wishing about it. It is called as sankalpa in Sanskrit. Think about it, right? There are so many so-called advanced or modern instruments in front of me. Let's take one example. I have a smartphone in front of me. It is full of all small elements put together to create a product called a smartphone. Correct? Now let's dissect that. Let's break it away. What is that? There is a glass on top. Cover is probably plastic. Then there is a CPU. CPU is a silicon chip. Silicon chips from silica. Silica comes from the sand. The aluminium, the metallic part comes from, of course you know the metal, that comes from the earth. Plastic comes from the it's a petrochemical product. It comes from the petroleum. Petroleum comes from, buried under earth for billions of years. Right? Trees and all that. We know all these things where come from. Give me a single element out of that product or anything you see around that was created without using the raw material available in the world. I already said, not even a speck of a dust. Humans cannot create anything on their own. Whatever we say, new creation, invention, whatever you may call it, it is just taking one thing, another thing, maybe modifying it, maybe putting it together, creating a new thing, which did not exist. But the question now becomes, what did God use? Now I'm not talking about Brahman, by the way. Brahman doesn't do anything. I don't have enough time to explain all these things. But now let's call it Ishwar, Paramatma. What did he use to create an earth? To create a sun? To create Mars? To create our solar system? To create our galaxy Milky Way? To create Andromeda galaxy? To create all the galaxies in the universe? If I have to build a house, I have to bring so much material to build a small house. Imagine even creating an infinitesimal planet called Earth, which is not even equal to the speck of a dust in this entire universe. What did God use? Where did he bring all the raw material from? Well, again we'll take a refuge in Vedas and Upanishads. They are explaining, Vedas are explaining, God did all this, he created the entire universe just by making a sankalpa. Aham ekoham bahusyam prajayeya. And the entire universe, Ananta Koti Brahmanda, multiple universes were created. So, my point I was trying to make, the other set of people, this other set of great minds, now we will give them a name, we label them called Rishis. They realize that there is no point in dissecting things around and breaking things around or putting things together and creating something new. Because whenever we as humans, when we create something new, there might be a selfish motive behind it. For example, I initially said, right, why we should take refuge in Upanishad? Because it is not a product of human mind. Today, if I happen to write a book about what is God, let's assume, I may feel like, because I'm speaking here, I may write a book about God. You know what? My intentions may not be clear. Maybe my true intention is not to educate people, but my true intention might be become a New York bestseller. My point is, whatever is the product of a human mind, it is full of flaws, and selfishness is the biggest one. The natural flaws we have, because we are not omniscient like God is. So this great set of bright minds, what we labeled as Rishis, they decided there is no point in dissecting and all these things. Let's go within. Because what is out there is also in here. So they use an instrument called mind itself. They use mind as an instrument. They use human intellect as an instrument. They use self-inquiry as an instrument. And then they reach the ultimate reality called Brahman. They realized it. But then there were very few, because it takes a very disciplined life. It takes a life full of dispassion called Vairagya. It's not easy to experience Brahman, of course, your true nature. It's a very difficult spiritual practice. But then, problem is, what about other people who are like common person who is not that spiritually disciplined? What about them? So whatever attributes, so-called attributes, because it is attribute-less, we are talking about Brahman, which is formless, which is characteristics-less, which is attribute-less, supreme reality. But still, when it comes to human experience, you got to talk about it. So they associated certain characteristics with it, and to make it simple for common people, they said, oh, wait a second. I'm talking about thousands of years ago, we are still there. Don't lose me, we are still thousands of years back. They thought fire. They saw the sun in the sky. They said, oh, sun is bright. Because of sun, all of us are surviving. Even today's modern science has accepted the fact. If sun vanishes for a second, even for a second, the life on this planet and other planets will be over. So our very survival is because of the sun. So they started associating the concept of God with sun, with fire, with some other elements. Don't forget the topic. Huh? Topic is how the concept of personal God is developed. In case you have forgotten, because I went here and there. So they said, okay, sun. So during Vedic time, sun was God, fire was God. But then soon humans realized, it's okay, we understand why you are calling sun a God. Sun is really beneficial to our life. In fact, our entire survival depends on it. We have no problem calling it God. But then still, it doesn't look like human, right? So then they conceived a human form of God. And then they called Vishnu. Then they gave some accessories to it. Chaturbhuja, Gada, Padma, Shankar, Chakra, ityadi. So now suddenly the God became personal, because now people started, oh, okay, he looks like me. So I can identify myself with that. Now we understand what you are talking about, that formless, attributeless, nirguna, nirakar, sadghana, chitghana, anandagana, sogata, sajatiya, vijatiya, vedarahita, shuddha, buddha, mukta. We get all that. I understand that. I truly believe in it. But for me, as a common person, it is very hard to comprehend it. I need something tangible. So the first tangible thing given in the name of God was fire, sun. Then it took a human form. It became Vishnu. And then there were incarnations of that God. Prabhu Shri Ram, Bhagavan Gopal Krishna. These are the incarnations of the same Supreme Reality. Now God became even more personal for me now. Because now I can worship God. Now I can do puja. Now I can recite some stotras. Now I can read the biography of God, so-called, called Leela, Charitra, Bhagavatam, Ramayana. So suddenly that intellectual exercise took suddenly the form of love for God, called bhakti. Bhakti stands for love. If you don't have love for God within your heart, then you do not deserve to say I am a bhakta. In fact, that word itself is wrong. You are upasaka. Because bhakta means jo vibhakta nahe. One who thinks he is separate from God doesn't have a right to call himself or herself a bhakta. Upasaka. Fine. You are doing upasana, you are worshipping, no problem. So that's how the concept of God slowly from universal supreme reality called Brahman, which is formless, attributeless, characterless, something that cannot be even described in words. Whatever words I am using for last 40-45 minutes, or even the words that have been used in the Vedas, ultimately they came to the conclusion, na iti, na iti. That is the only way to describe God. Because again, all of us are confined by human brain. We can only comprehend things which are of part of my experience. So I ask a question, does God look like this wall? No. Does it look like that light? No. Does it look like this? No. Look like that? No. Answer to everything I say is just no. And that is the very description of God. Because it's again beyond human mind. But it's extremely difficult to comprehend that. So we are fortunate to have this God, which is with attributes, with form, with characteristics, with life story, what we call Leela. Bhagavantacha Leela hai. Bhagavan ki Leela hai. Why Leela? Because he is taking that shape. Look at the beautiful form he has taken. We feel attracted. In fact, a small thing, if you notice, there is a smile, a very subtle smile on all the idols' face. That is something we should be watching when we come to the temple, and if possible getting lost into it. Because that smile is a manifestation of the Ananda within. Because this is the embodiment of Ananda. that should remind me the Ananda within my heart, then that's a true darshan of Lord Ram or Lord Krishna, whatever the deity we are talking about. And last point, and then I will stop, is so we talked about how, and I divided how into two parts, how the concept of God got developed. Now this personal God is definitely for the human mind. It suddenly became tangible. It suddenly became something that I can worship, I can see, I can do puja, I can develop love for. It's how will you develop a love for something that you can't see, you can't touch, you can feel, something you can't even think about? How will you feel love for it? It is very hard. That's why Brahma is called as Anupasya. This is Upasya. But Saguna-chini adhare nirguna pavije nirdhare. Sara sara vichare santa sange. I don't have time to translate everything I am saying in Marathi or Sanskrit. But the journey begins here and ends in the true nature of Lord Rama or Lord Krishna, which is the Brahman. Nirguna Nirakar. That's why when we say Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, there are three Rams in it. One is the Saguna Sakar, the first one, Shri Ram. The second one is the Ishwara who created this entire world, that Ram. And the third one is the Brahmarupa Ram. That is what even Lord Krishna has declared in Bhagavad Gita. He explained to Uddhava that Uddhava, what you see is not my real form. Now go and contemplate on my real nature, which is Brahman. Because this, now it's time to end this avatar, end of Dwapar Yuga and beginning of the Kali Yuga. And then the last topic was, as I said, the last point was how, basically means how to now realize God, how to experience God. And for that, there are many ways, very many methods called Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. I can go on and on. Even if I just give you the list, that itself will take another hour. Point, it doesn't matter. Whatever appeals to you, whatever you like, whatever your, what is called pinda, according to your pinda in Sanskrit. But whatever you like Saguna Sakar, go for it. You just like to sit down and meditate on Nirguna Nirakar, go for it. Because now the destination is fixed. What path you are taking doesn't matter, whether you take this highway or that highway, doesn't matter. It's okay. But as far as we have this maturity, you are good. The moment you lose that maturity, we start fighting amongst ourselves. Then my deity is superior than your deity. Then both of you are stupid. You don't even understand what the real nature of the deity is there. So my point is, if I talk about how to experience God, how to realize God, and what are the different ways, it's a very big topic in itself. And I also have to ensure that I leave something behind so that the temple guys invite me again to, next time talk about it. I'm just kidding. This is another way to tell you the time is over. But it's a very big topic. I left it at the end by design because now we are getting into the details, in the widths of it. Like, how do I realize God? Now this person, for her it might be one way, for him it will be another way. So it is a very big topic in itself. If time permits, next time we will talk about it. It's also not going to be part of one lecture, maybe a series of lectures. But I think, just to summarize my talk today, you must have realized why it is essential, why Upanishad declares that no matter who you are, if you are born as a human being, then the goal of human life remains the same for everybody, because even the people who are not here, even the people who never go to the temple, even for the people who are so-called atheists, they are also seeking happiness every single moment. But they don't realize where does the happiness come from, which we learned today, that it comes from the very source who I am. Sadhana, Chidhana, Anandana, Brahma. So we understood today why we should realize God, why we should experience God. or Brahman. We also understood a little bit what is the nature of it. We also understood how that impersonal God was or became personal so that it becomes accessible for a common person. And then, of course, there are numerous ways to go about it, which probably will cover sometime in future. With that said, whatever good things, noble things I said today, I offer it at the feet of my Sadguru, as well as Prabhu Shri Ramachandra, Bhagavan Shri Gopala Krishna, and Bhagavan Shri Mahadev. Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj ki jai. Jai Jai Raghuveer Samartha.
Now, before we end the program, I would like to give a token of appreciation to Mangeshdada. First, give him a round of applause. Again, with our request, this is his second visit. Last year, same time, he was here, and we all enjoyed his wisdom, his word of wisdom. And again, we are looking forward for another opportunity to listen to you, Mangeshdada. So we invite you again to the temple. Whenever you are in this area, our temple welcomes you, and definitely would like to hear another set of words. So I would like to request our Panditji, and we would like to appreciate Mangeshdada.
Om Shri Vajjaswamai Shamaro Jamagadagmanu Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvidavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti. दिव्य ज्ञान शब्दातीत है। जो आपने सुना, अनुभव तभी होता है जब हमारे भीतर श्रद्धा, विमल श्रद्धा हो, अगाध प्रेम हो अपने गुरु के प्रति। ऐसा दिव्य ज्ञान तभी आता है जब गुरु कृपा होती है। आप इतनी देर से सुन रहे थे, मुझे ज्यादा बोलने की आवश्यकता नहीं है। यदि उसको पचा सके तो हम कृतार्थ हो जाएंगे। जितना सुना उसमें से यदि 5% भी हम लोग ग्रहण कर सके तो समझिए कि हमें दिव्य मार्ग प्रशस्त करने का अवसर प्रारंभ हुआ हमारे लिए। केवल सुनने से नहीं होगा हमारा कल्याण। सुना, चल दिए, आए, फिर सुना, तो ये तो सर्कल चलता रहेगा। सुनने के बाद क्या हमको मिला है, गुरु का यही महत्व है। गुरु कोई शरीर नहीं है। अज्ञान तिमिरांधस्य ज्ञानांजन शलाकया चक्षुः उन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अज्ञान रूपी तिमिर माने घन, बिल्कुल घन घोर अंधकार जहां पर हो, जहां पर एक उंगली के पार भी कुछ न दिखाई पड़ता हो, उसको भी गुरु कृपा होने पर सब दूर हो जाता है, तब तुरंत दिखाई पड़ता है। तो ऐसे में विनम्र भाव से आप देख रहे मंगेश जी कला को, तो मैं हृदय से, मेरे पास शब्द नहीं है, केवल मैं आपके प्रति हार्दिक श्रद्धांजलि समर्पित कर सकता हूँ। शब्दों में मैं कुछ व्यक्त नहीं कर सकता। तो आप ऐसे ही हमारे ऊपर सद्भाव बनाए रखें। देवालय में जब भी अवसर हो आप आए, पधारें, सदैव आपका हृदय से स्वागत है। जब भी इस क्षेत्र में आप आए तो कृपा करके आते रहिएगा, और यही विनम्र निवेदन मैं आपसे करता हूँ। और सभी से यही निवेदन करूँगा कि सुनने के बाद मनन बहुत आवश्यक है। यदि मनन नहीं किया तो हमको कुछ मिलने वाला है ही नहीं। ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 1 घंटा रहेगा, 2 घंटा, 4 घंटा, और अधिक सामर्थ्यवान बुद्धि हुई तो 2-4 दिन रहेगा। उसके बाद फिर अपने में ही हम लोग वापस आ जाएंगे। तो मनन के बिना हमारा कल्याण संभव है ही नहीं। इसलिए मैं तो बहुत ही कम समय में सुन पाया हूँ, लेकिन मेरे लिए वह समय की कोई गणना नहीं होती है। ज्ञान समय आती है, एक पल में भी हमको आनंद आ सकता है और पूरा जीवन बीत जाए तो भी नहीं आ सकता। तो ज्यादा समय न लेते हुए पुनः मैं आपको हृदय से देवालय की ओर से बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूँ, स्वागत करता हूँ, नमन करता हूँ। धन्यवाद।